Hello, everybody. Dr. Rick Wallace here. Stopping in on you for a brief moment just to talk to you about some things that are in line with some of the things I shared with you guys last week. To give you an idea of what I'm doing here is I'm sort of killing several birds with one stone. I like to share information, ideas that have the capacity to empower people. My thing is when you empower someone, you give them the control and the reins of their lives back, and you allow them to take hold of their destiny. So I'm real big and real passionate about attempting to share those things that I believe will help people gain some traction in their lives and make some changes and do some things that are fulfilling. And so what you're actually getting here is me doing that. At the same time, I'm actually bearing out what I'm writing in my latest book, which is book number 20, Critical Mass. Critical Mass is a book that is universal in its scope. In other words, it's not directed at one particular target audience. It's directed at anybody who wants to change their lives. It's what I do at the Visionetics Institute. And so it's my passion. My passion is to come into people's life. My grandfather always told me, son, fill your space. And the way he described that was to make sure that every time I came in contact with someone, I left them in a better situation than when I found them. When I walked into a room, the people in that room would be better off once I left than when I got there. That I had a responsibility and a purpose associated with the work that's associated with my vision. And as long as I'm only pursuing things and accomplishing things to satisfy a personal thirst, I will never be fulfilled. There would always be this emptiness, and I've experienced that. And so what I try to do now is I try to empower people with what I've learned over the course of my life, with what I've learned in teaching and sharing with others, just a totality of what it means to be a person who makes your presence felt. I believe that we were designed and created by the Almighty, the grand designer of the universe, with a purpose in mind. I've never in my life seen anything that was designed that did not have a purpose. And the designer never, ever designs the thing or the creation with the idea of mediocrity or average in mind. In other words, you never design something, no designer, no inventor, no creator at any point in life, and it definitely not the grand creator of and the infinite intelligence of the universe, the Almighty. No designer has ever designed anything and thinking, I just want it to barely do its job. I just want it to be there and barely get the job done. Everybody designs something, and the prototype might not be what it will end up being, but the prototype is the beginning of an idea of creating something that performs at the highest level possible for what it was designed to do. So that when I run into people who are caught up in the maze of mediocrity, then I understand that there's something that they are doing that has interrupted the natural flow of the design. In other words, you're designed for greatness. Greatness is actually embedded in your DNA. It's a part of who you are, and the reason it is because you were not only created by God, you were created from God. So if that's the case, greatness is inside of you. You know, there's this thing that we have to come to grips with. And that is the vast majority of us have been conditioned to escape responsibility in the idea of responsibility. And therefore we live in mediocrity. What do I mean by that? We will walk away from the challenge of greatness to live in a place where we do menial work associated or attached to the idea of responsibility, and never ever fulfill our destiny, never ever walk in purpose, never ever live at the level of our design. We leave this world having left a grand portion of our capacity and potential untapped, because that's what everybody else is doing, because that's what we've been told is expected of us, because we've been conditioned to survive instead of thrive. And so it's important for us to understand that we have a responsibility, first and foremost, to the designer to live out to the full potential of the design. You can't say that you have this relationship with the Almighty and that you are a servant of the Almighty, however or whatever faith you're operating in. You cannot make that declaration and then skirt your responsibility to your design. You cannot talk about being designed and not investigate the depth of the design, which is indicative of your purpose. And your purpose is that thing which fuels your passion, which drives you towards your destiny. You cannot visit the idea of a creator without visiting the purpose of the creation. Nothing is created simply to exist. But the vast majority of people I come in contact with are happy simply existing. Everybody wakes up in the day just trying to get through the day, never thinking about the power and the passion to change the world. Within you is the power to change things, the power to move the universe, the power to create. All of that is within you because God is in you. And I'm going to get to that in a second. But yesterday I posted something, which is one of the chapters in Critical Mass, which is a book that is book number 20. It's going to be dropping somewhere towards the end of the year. And this book encompasses, it's a combination of everything that I've learned in personal development, personal growth, self-empowerment, human behavior, and all of these things. But even more, it's about understanding the God consciousness of the universe and how your thoughts interact with that consciousness, and why we seem to continuously get the things we don't want, and what that means in thoughts. Your thoughts have physicality, and there's an entire chapter, and I go into great detail. I can't get into that detail here, but I go into great detail about how your thoughts have physicality. You've heard it before, especially if you are of a faith base that emerges from Abraham. You've read it before. You've read that as a man thinks, so is he. If you've read James Allen's book with the same title, As a Man Thinketh, you understand that your thoughts are seeds that produce and manifest themselves and harvest in the future. The thing is, the vast majority of us never examine why. I was one of those kids that you can never sit up and tell just because I said so. And you couldn't give it to me. Even if you told me to do something and I trusted you and I was doing it and it was working for me, I still wasn't happy with saying, okay, it works. I needed to know how, because I felt like there was a greater sense of power when you knew how. There was a greater sense of resource. And the thing is, I looked and I followed, and there are all these things. And then I started to understand the power of thought. And then I started to look at it, and I went through all of these different disciplines to gain a stronger sense of our foundation. Because the one thing I can tell you is, no matter what happens in life, no matter how positive you are in your thinking, no matter how positive you are in your thinking, there's going to be a time that you're going to have a disruption to your equilibrium, to that balance and harmony you have in your life. The vicissitudes of life are going to roll into your paradise. You cannot circumvent life struggles. But here's the difference. When you have a sense of who you are and you know who you are beyond a shadow of a doubt, and you are executing your presence, meaning that you are making your presence felt in your environment, that means your struggles are events, not long-term experiences. When you look up and you've got years and years and years and years of struggle, you're out of alignment with your purpose. You're out of alignment with your design. You're out of alignment with your function. When you're going to have struggles. Struggles are your training ground. Adversity is your training ground. I often say, especially when talking to my faith-based people, that adversity is the fertile soil in which the seeds of faith are planted and cultivated. See, you got to have some adversity to develop strength. You got to have some adversity to develop endurance, resilience, and the pertinacity to be able to push through some things. But it should not be your long-term experience. You should be living a life of victory, a life of power, a life of influence, a life of impact, a life of seeing your destiny unwind before you. And that when you get to a point of challenge, you should be so prepared that you don't see it as a problem. You see it as a challenge. You see it as an opportunity. You see it as a point in to show what you're made of. And that is, to me, regardless of your faith, that is, to me, the most powerful evangelical tool you can have, is the life you live. It's the way you present yourself. It's the way that you carry out things. It's the way that you engage adversity. It's the way that you handle success. The life you live speaks far more powerfully than the words you speak. And so you've got to understand that in order to be a true representative of the faith that you claim, you've got to be living a life of power that would make someone want to step into the environment in which you are living and have a piece of what you're experiencing. If you're constantly talking about how awesome your faith is and all they see is defeat, and yet we wonder why there's this mass exodus from faith-based systems, because we got a bunch of stuff full of emotion, no direct, no specificity of thought, no specificity of intent. Intent is powerful. It is a guiding of the thoughts with purpose in mind. And when you don't have that, when you don't have an intent, when you don't have yourself set, when you don't have an idea of where you're going. That was a study done in 1953 at Yale University, if I'm not mistaken. 1953 Yale University. And they interviewed the graduating class of Yale. And they asked them a lot of questions. One of the questions that they asked was, do you have a specific plan and goal? Do you have a goal and a specific plan that will guide you towards that goal for life, for your life? Are you already set with a plan and a direction of where you're headed and what you're set out to accomplish it? Out of that entire class of Yale, I believe it was like 3% said they had a plan. And they came back and revisited the survivors of this class 20 years later, so 1973. They came back and they visited them. They questioned them about a lot of things, how they feel about themselves, how they view their lives, what do they see, have they reached the point in life that they thought they would be when they first graduated, a bunch of other things. And it was a conclusion was drawn by the researchers that the 3%, the survivors of the 3%, seem to be more happy, more fulfilled, and a bunch of other things. But that's relevant. That's left up to interpretation. The one element they were able to measure with great specificity without any room for error was financial status. And what they found was those kids, that 3%, that left that school with a purpose in mind and a plan to go after that purpose, meaning their thoughts were directed in a direction and they had a plan to fulfill what was in front of them. That 3% had obtained more wealth and financial status than the entire 97% that didn't combine. That is beyond statistical significance. That's beyond it. That's beyond statistical significance
is when you have a reality that can't be explained away by coincidence or happenstance. When you have to look at it and say, okay, something's happening here. And that's definitely statistically significant. So what you see is thought has intent and thought has purpose. What we can understand is that when we set our intent, we literally send a message to our subconscious, which controls the predominance of our behavior. Studies show that the human brain has the capacity to process 4 billion bits of information per second. And the conscious mind can only be aware of about 2,000 bits of that in a given second, and only be totally, completely cognizant of a very small amount of that. But yet your behaviors, your reactions, your things, there are things that you don't even have to think, that if you hear it, you see it, or you smell it, you instinctively act. Your subconscious is moving you. You're acting off of subconscious. You call it an instinct, but it's a subconscious demand. It's a training. It's an automatic control mechanism within the brain that actually operates in what's known as the reptilian part of the brain, the most ancient part of the brain that's specifically designed for the purpose of survival. Anything that threatens your constant place of harmony in whatever level, whether it's just upsetting your harmony, whether it's a threat of death, whether it's a threat of sickness, the body, is automatically going to go into what's known as fight or flight mode. There's going to be a release of adrenaline, a release of cortisol, and all these things are going to happen. You're going to get up and you're either going to fight or you're going to run. Anything in between those responses, that anxiety you sense a lot is coming from subconscious or cognition, subconscious ideas or cognitions that are triggering something you may not be consciously aware of. And yet you're constantly moving through the day with this high level of anxiety, this high level of stress that has a physical impact on your life. A lot of us are sick because of what we are thinking in our subconscious and entertaining a lot in our conscious. We don't understand. There's a thing called psychosomatics. You can literally make yourself sick from what you're thinking. The brain is actually more powerful than the body. Now, when I say words have physicality, I'm not just simply talking from a philosophical perspective. I'm talking from a measurable, law-abiding reality. And when I say law, a law means that if there's something being done and it's done a certain way, you get the absolute same result every time. It cannot be aborted. It cannot be circumvented. It is going to happen. And so you got these universal laws that are placed in order and put there and designed that holds everything into this order. When I look at the world, I look at the universe, I look at everything. When I look at the fact that there are over 100 different components and elements, that if they were to move one way to the right in the slightest degree to the right or to the left, life on this planet as we know it would no longer be livable. We would not exist anymore. But yet it's being held in constant state over time. And life is evolving in this state. That's a designer. That's called irreducible complexity. And so there are these things there. But let me get to the power of the thought and how thoughts have physicality. In the course of science, we've traveled through Newtonian physics, and then we moved into the world of New Age physics. We are aware of Einstein's theory of relativity. We know that light travels at 186,000 miles per second. We know a bunch of different things. Enter the world of quantum physics, which now is able to actually break down the atom. We know this for sure, that everything on this planet is made from atoms. The density and the texture of whatever is made is based on the inner workings, the speed and the movement of the protons, neutrons, and electrons. We know that. But now we have instruments that allow us to break down the atom and completely break it down. And what we find out is that everything on this planet is made of energy, including your thoughts. Matter of fact, your thoughts are probably the most powerful form of energy on the planet. And what we also know is energy interacts with energy, and energy attracts like energy. It's called resonation. A great explanation of resonation is and I'm about to age myself here, but most people already know I don't hide my age. I'm 50. When I grew up, that was this, you know, there were a lot of things on now. The children's programming now is completely different. When I grew up, there was a bunch of shows, but it was common to see a program come on, and there was this big woman who hit these real high notes, and she would hit this note and hold it, and the glass would shatter. And I've shared this before, but the glass would shatter. Okay, what's happening there? And I used to say when I was a kid, that ain't real. And, you know, and I didn't understand it. And then I come to find out later on in studying physics that it is real. And then I understood, as I developed more into it, I understood how. The voice, when energy or air moves across the vocal cords, it creates energy, it creates a frequency, it creates a vibration. And no matter what happens, that vibration has a pattern or a frequency. Even when it moves through something like a window, which is solid, it travels through that window and maintains its pattern. Well, it changes its pattern, but it maintains its frequency. And then it reestablishes the pattern after entering into the air again. So we understand that the reason you can hear a woman on the inside of the house while you're standing on the outside is the ability of the energy to move through things. But check this out. Energy attracts like energy, right? And energy resonates with like energy. So what causes the lady singing to break the glass? Everything has energy, even that inanimate object, the glass, is made of atoms, which is energy. Now that glass has a frequency. If you were to take a metal rod or a small metal and tap that glass, it's going to let out a specific sound, a specific frequency. When her voice equals that exact frequency, that glass will resonate with that energy, absorb that energy, and because the vibration is too great, the glass shatters. The same way that glass attracted that energy. It's the same way the energy you emit attracts what you continuously get all the time. You will find that people who are negative tend to attract negative people. People who are positive, while they encounter negative situations, tend to attract positive things, positive people, positive situations. Even when they roll into a negative situation, their optimism provides a portrait or a perspective of something that allows them to turn the negative into a positive. And you will look at them, if you are a negative person, and sit up and say that they just have an unfair advantage, that they got favor. Favor comes to those who align themselves with their purpose. Favor comes to those who align themselves with their design. Favor comes to those who align their thinking with higher expectations. When you expect something, you get it. When you consistently expect it, it impacts your behavior, it impacts your actions, it impacts all of the things around you, including the energy of the universe that you're impacting. Let me take it a little bit deeper, and then I'm gonna get off of here. A few decades back, I cannot think of the guy's name, and I know it, but a scientist decided to do an experiment. He took a DNA swab. I want to say a subject's white or red blood cells. Can't remember that either. But he took a swab and took DNA, a sample from those cells, and he put it in a dish and found a way to connect a lie detector test to it. He took that sample and that lie detector 7 miles away from the person themselves, the subject, and turned on the lie detector test. Then they exposed the subject, who happened to be an Air Force or a Navy pilot, but a military pilot who had been in combat, started to expose them to visual stimuli of combat sorties, missions. And as he began to mentally and emotionally respond to those, sitting there watching it, the readings, he was also attached, connected to a lie detector test. The very same readings that the lie detector that was attached to him was giving, the lie detector that was attached to his DNA 7 miles away was doing the same thing. Then they started to increase the distance of this experiment to up to 1,000 miles and got the same results. We're talking about the power of energy and thought and the connectivity of all of those things. Then there's this ongoing thing that scientists started to say, okay, let's look deeper into the atom. And we found, remember I just told you that energy, while it may change patterns or forms, maintains the same, it maintains the same identity. Well, what we found was, and I'm hoping I can get there. I'm hoping I can get there because I want to explain it, but I don't want to be too detailed so that it takes me so long to get there. You guys know me. But anyway, what they found is as they began to break down the atom, there's subatomic matter, and it goes down and to the point of what it's referred to as quantum. And that's where you come with quantum physics. And you got all of these different explanations. You got these guys like Einstein and Stephen Hawking and on that's delving off into this idea, right? And so most people are sitting up saying, well, that's science. It has nothing to do with God, but actually it has everything to do with God because you cannot escape God. God is everywhere, right? We were taught that. We never could figure out how. He knew everything. We couldn't figure out how. He was all powerful. We couldn't figure out how. But what they found was this, and it's unbelievable. What they found was this, that when you get to a certain point of any piece of energy, it becomes neutral. It no longer belongs to a particular property. You can get to a point to where water is no longer water. It's simply energy waiting to have another form of energy imposed upon it to tell it what to be at the very nature. So it can literally be determined what that will become because it has no particular identity as of yet. But then they went further. They went further and found that if you go deeper, energy converts to consciousness. And those of faith who are in science call it the mind of God. And here's why they call it the mind of God. When they were trying to measure the energy at this level, it would change. It would allow them to measure one measurement, like maybe the speed of the neutron or the proton, but not the location. Not the force. And so they could, the momentum, they could never get it all measured at the same time, and it would change when they would try to measure it. So it was like it knew it was being measured and it would start to change. So they realized every time we go to measure it, it begins to change. Now check this out. When they paid even closer attention, they found out that even when they were thinking about changing it, it began to change. It knew what they were thinking, the mind of God. In other words, everything is of. He created the universe out of himself. And that he gave those who he held in highest regard the power to do the same thing. And therefore made in his image. The thing is, we tend to sit back and attack everything emotionally. We don't know how to use our emotions. We don't understand them as indicative mechanisms to identify particular situations. We see them as what we respond and act by. That's why we have no endurance. That's why we have no persistence or resilience in what we pursue, because we use our emotions. Some of us go after things because we're mad because somebody said we couldn't have it or said we couldn't. So we're going to prove them wrong, or we're mad because we are angry, or we're going after it because we're desperate. We're going after it because our emotions are driving us. Problem with emotions are they don't have endurance. They are for a moment to give you an idea of a current reality. If you are angry, it's because somebody's wronged you or you've perceived someone wronged you. If you are sad, it's because in some way you've suffered loss. If you are happy, it's because something is going your way at the current moment. All of your emotions, fear is normally attached to uncertainty or a perception or expectation of something bad. And so all of these things are indicative of something that's going on. When you learn to read your emotions and then use your reasoning, your training, your faith to engage the moment, you will find that you're able to do exceptional and extraordinary things, which you were designed to do. You were not designed to simply exist. You were not designed to simply just show up every day and live my life. You will be average by default. If you're just born and show up and do what everybody else does, you will end up where everybody else ends up. But the uniqueness of your design is a level of specificity that has the uniqueness of your gifts and your talents that are meant to be honed, refined, and merged with skill to do exceptional, extraordinary things. They were not meant to sit there and just be what everybody else. in order to be able to do the things that most people aren't doing, you've got to be willing to step out and do the things they are not doing. And if you want what they don't have, then you got to do what they're not doing. You got to do what the exceptional and extraordinary people are doing. You got to start calling things that are not as though they were. Not doing it from a cliche-ish perspective. Not doing it because that's what people say you got to do. Not simply proclaiming it, but literally embracing it. Literally sitting up and saying, you know what? I'm going to move on it. I'm going to take action. I'm going to believe it. What I'm telling you is, by experience, through observational study, through experience in my own life, through watching and studying every other exceptional person that has reached a certain level in different areas, relationships, finance, business development, personal influence, social influence. I've studied these people, and all of them are practicing this at a level, at a certain level. It's in their rituals. It's in the way that they wake up every morning and do things. From the first day, from the first point of your morning, you should have a ritual that sets your mental state. You should have a ritual that sets your mental state, because you are the sum total of your rituals. If you've got a ritual where every morning you wake up worrying about everything that's due and how you're not going to be able to get it done, how you're not going to be able to pay it, it's reflected in the state that you're living in right now. If you wake up with a ritual in which the first thing you think about is how much you can't stand the person that's sleeping next to you, it's reflected in your relationship and your marriage. If you wake up every day with a ritual that reminds you of all the mistakes you made that are now standing in front of you as manifestations in the form of children, then you are probably a poor parent. And you can go on down the line. These rituals set the tone of how you engage and experience life. When you wake up with the mindset, and the first thing is to set your state of mind so that you can engage the challenges of life victoriously, the first thing you wake up and do is engage the idea of gratitude. If you don't have gratitude, if you don't have a sense of thankfulness, a sense of appreciation, see, I see far too many people who have expectations that rise above appreciation. When expectation precedes appreciation, your life will always be in turmoil, because nobody on this planet can consistently meet all of your expectations. But when you wake up and you develop a heart of gratitude, when you develop a mind of thankfulness, and there's always something to rest that on. With me, when I wake up, it's not hard at all, because I just look to the left, and there she lies. And then everything else is negotiable. If I've got this queen laying next to me that pours into me, that loves me despite me. I mean, you know, that person that knows my weaknesses, knows my flaws, and still says, we got this, we ride this out until death do us part. And you can feel the energy of that commitment. It's not just something that's being said casually. It's something that's meant. That's all I need for gratitude. But then I roll up and I go get to waking up kids and sitting in the school, and I see the beauty and the possibilities of what they're going to become, and that I have the power to influence that. And that's something to be grateful for. So that's gratitude. Now, when I have a heart of gratitude, the one thing I can tell you is, when you have a heart of gratitude, you can't entertain fear. When you have a heart of gratitude, there's no anxiety. When you have a heart of gratitude, there's no constant worry. When you have a heart of gratitude, there's no anger. I'm talking about all of the hatred and all of that stuff that weighs you down is immediately dismissed when you learn how to be thankful and grateful. It doesn't mean you have to be settled or content. You should always want to be growing. You should always want to be better than you were the next day. You should always want to have a higher or greater capacity to touch the lives of the people around you. But you should always start your day with setting a state of mind that says, I'm built for this. I'm going to go out and I'm going to make this happen. You know, I've been asked, man, when I was going through what I was going through in 2012, or when I was back at the age of 25 and I was losing my confidant, my father, my male model, my mentor, when I was losing him at 25 and people were watching how I was dealing with it, or when I was going through what I was going through too, people were like, man, how are you doing? How are you smiling? How are you continuing on? How are you going through what you're going through and still showing up over here and doing what you're doing? I'm built for this. It doesn't mean that it doesn't impact me. I refuse to allow any negative thing happening in my life to dominate my life. Does it mean I don't get upset? No, it doesn't mean that. Does it mean I don't have moments where I feel sad? No, it doesn't. Doesn't. I feel everything anybody else feels. I choose not to wallow in it. I choose not to stay there. I choose not to let that define me. I choose to rise up and be what I was designed to be despite of where I am. I'm not always where I want to be. But if I can wake up every morning and I can measure progress, that's something to be grateful for. I celebrate progress every day in every area of my life. And if it's a moment or a time when I examine myself and I do it introspectively and I see that I haven't gained ground, I don't beat myself up. I'm honest with myself and say, man, this is not where we said we were going to be. This is not how we said we were going to be doing things. This has got to be dealt with. Then I put it on the table and I deal with it and I keep moving. Why is that important? Because your thoughts are energy. Your thoughts are the seeds of your destiny. The thoughts are what's going to be planted, cultivated, and manifest themselves in the reality of your future. So if I'm constantly entertaining something negative, even if I'm constantly entertaining it, saying that I hate it, I don't like it, I wish it would go away, I'm still manifesting it because the seeds of negativity are still there. There is a power in the mind that we still don't understand. When I leave this world, we still will only know a fraction of the power of the mind, of the power to produce our reality. But what we do know is enough to solidify us and set us. Again, I will say this and I will end what I've got to say today. If you claim a relationship with the Almighty, it should be reflected in the life you're living. Now, I don't mean that every day is going to be peaches and cream and every day is going, I'm telling you that you're probably going to face a lot more challenges and a lot more resistance when you raise your standards and expectations. Why? Because nothing comes freely. You have to work for it. You have to fight for it. You have to push for it. But the rewards that you get when you do it far outweigh the strain and the struggle you have to go through to have it. But you've got to do that. You cannot be a representative of the Almighty in a constant state of mediocrity. You can't say that God is almighty, all powerful. And then if you are of a faith that says that God resides in you in any way, and he does in more ways than you can imagine, if you are that, how can the Almighty be resident in you and you be impotent? How can you have the infinite intelligence that created this universe literally within you? How can you have the power to speak things, to think things into existence, and be living a consecutively defeated life? Am I speaking down to what I'm saying is no one's ever told you that there's power in Romans 12:2. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. There's power in 2 Corinthians 3. In 2 Corinthians 10:3-5, where it tells us that we are that the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God for the pulling down of strongholds, and that we are to cast down all arguments, thoughts, ideas, presentations that move against that thing that we say we believe and we stand for. We got to guard our gates. And at the same time we're guarding our gates, our ears, our eyes, our sensory perceptors from negative interference, we've got to be feeding our minds, our subconscious minds, with something positive. Do you realize because the subconscious mind can pick up things that the conscious mind isn't even aware of, that you can literally sleep with headphones on that speak of what's possible, and it be planted in your subconscious, and you wake up and you actually consistently do that, your change in what's happening underneath the surface will be so powerful. It will begin to impact how you think above the surface. That's why I am adamant about parents guarding what their children watch. Because what we sit up and consistently define as entertainment has immense power to impact the subconscious, the non-conscious brain. It plants seeds in that subconscious that has influence. Things you can literally, there are things that your subconscious picks up when you are looking and scanning a room that you don't see. It does not miss anything. So you've got to be constantly aware of what you're feeding your mind. And then be conscious and focused on what you're giving from your mind. One thing that really bothers me is this need that we have to pull people and hold people in the box in which we live. It's almost like this innate responsibility that we have that, hey, this is where I'm trapped at, and absolutely nobody is allowed to even entertain the idea of getting out of this box. Trying to get out of this box is irresponsible. Trying to get out of this box is foolish and fodder. Trying to get out of this box is ridiculous. This is where we belong. This is where everybody else is at. What's your problem? There's nothing realistic about what you're thinking right now. And anybody that knows me will tell you, if you want to be ejected from my circle, use the term be realistic when I'm talking about something I'm thinking about doing. I will dismiss you. I will not have anybody in my circle who will try to impose their limiting beliefs on me. Period. I think it was, and it's crazy that you have these two groups of people, right? One group of people is sitting over here calling the other group foolish, stupid, irresponsible, unrealistic, and all of that. But it's weird how this group is the one doing all the unbelievable stuff, and this group are all the ones sitting here complaining about why they can't do anything. But they're ridiculing the people with the different thought processes. It's amazing. When you look at it, look at what one group is ridiculing. And you will very rarely find this group ridiculing. Now, you'll find this group talking about why people can't get there, why people fail to get there. And what most people will tell you is, there's nothing different about me except I think like. I do this, this, and this, meaning anyone else can do it, but they've got to change their approach. And when you talk about this be realistic thing, I heard Will Smith in an interview once say, why be realistic? And then he says, being realistic is the most traveled path to mediocrity. Being realistic is the most traveled path to mediocrity. And then he goes on and he makes some examples. He says, I'm pretty sure that when you think about it, having the capacity to go, especially if you were to go back 150 years and ask people, and you told them that there'll be a time that you'll be able to walk over to a switch on the wall and turn it on and lights will come on. And they'll be powered and you won't have to relight lamps and all this stuff. That was unrealistic, but fortunately, Edison and Latimer didn't think so. And then you go and you say, if you tell somebody 150 years ago that you're going to take this big band of metal and make this big tube and put wings on it, and you're going to fly it across the ocean with people and luggage in it, tons of weight, and it fly across the ocean, they would told you you're crazy. That's not realistic. But thankfully, the Wright brothers and others didn't think so. And you can go on and down the line. If you had talked about the capacity of taking a phone, even after the phones were invented and they were communicating through lines of communication, the idea of having a phone that was connected to nothing, you can hold it in your hand and take it wherever you went and yet be able to pick it up and make a phone call. Energy. Here we are again. The use of energy, interacting with waves in the air and frequencies, transporting information. Oh, we talking the power of energy. But if you'd have said that 60 years ago and said you're crazy, that's not realistic. And now we're taking it to another level. We got satellite phones. I mean, and on down the line, and no telling where they're going to go from that. But see, the people who thought about being realistic sit up and said it wasn't possible, accepted that it wasn't impossible, and therefore it became impossible, and they never even entertained it. The people who sit up and said, it's possible, I just don't know how, went out and figured out how. They processed, both the Wright brothers and Edison went through a bunch of failures before they succeeded, but they did. It's in sitting up and understanding that the only impossibility is the impossibilities that are set by your limited beliefs. That seems wild, right? Because you can't create. You got to accept the world you've been given. You got to kind of play with the hand you've been dealt. Now I can recreate a reality that may take some time, but I'm never, ever stuck in a situation that I don't want to be in. And that alone changes my capacity for mental health and my capacity for physical health. When I believe I'm trapped in a situation that I don't like, that's making me miserable, it actually makes me more miserable, makes me sicker, and advances the date of my death. You can be literally committing spiritual suicide and slowly killing yourself at the same time. But when I simply understand that I have the power through which to change my current reality, if I apply myself, open my mind, and refuse to quit, the very idea that I'm not stuck here opens up the pathway to healing, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. A lot of us are killing ourselves because we've trapped ourselves in our own thinking. And get up every day and complain about it. Sometimes you're not going to see how until you make the decision to. So many want to get the how first, but the decision and the commitment comes first. Make that commitment, and then everything else is open. I went about 17 minutes, longer than I planned, and I'm hoping that it definitely does something. And like I said, what I'm going to be sharing moving forward over the next several weeks are literally chapters from the book Critical Mass. Obviously, these chapters, I line it out in greater detail. I explain it with a lot more detailed attached to it. And I explain how you can actually apply it to your life. The book is now in the pre-release sale phase, so you can actually order the book and get it at a discounted price. Plus, if you order during the pre-sale, you get the ebook version. You get the ebook version free. The link to order the book is in the comment field if you're on Facebook, in the description box if you're on YouTube. But what I can tell you is, this book is a combination of over and over proven strategies of what the creation can do when they understand that they have the power to create. There are a couple of people that have actually checked in on this. I don't know if they're still here or not, but I've worked with them and I've watched them since I've worked with them. And I know what that small shift does. Because see, it's that moment in time. A lot of people say it takes a long time to change. No, change in your life takes place the moment you make the decision. Now it just takes time for the manifestation of what you created with this new idea of where you're going and who you are to take place. It's like anything else. If the thoughts that you have are seeds of your destiny, work with me for a minute. If the thoughts you have are the seeds of your destiny, now take the analogy of the seed and then apply it. If I plant an apple, I can't go out there an hour from now and expect an apple. If I plant apple seeds, I can't go out there in an hour and expect apples. But the seed is there. If I sustain the fertile ground, if I continue to water it, if I continue to nurture it, it's going to produce an apple, but the seed has a gestation period. It's a period through which the seed has to, and it knows, attract to it from the ground the nutrients it needs in order to expand and grow and become what it was designed and created to be. but it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight, but there's a gestation period. And that gestation period, as it works out, produces the end result. But it started and it was real the moment that the seed was planted. Now, check this out. Because everybody is coming from a different background, a different level of beliefs, different situations, going through different experiences and traumas. Nobody can tell you what your gestation period is for any dream. Just because one person did it in a year don't mean you're going to do it in a year. Just because one person did it in 6 months doesn't mean it's going to happen for you in 6 months. You have to make the commitment and remain true to the commitment. You got to believe in your purpose. You got to believe in your design. You got to believe that if it was meant for you and it's set out, and if you can conceive it in your mind, it's a part of the possibilities God has set in front of you, and that you can have it. And then you don't allow anything to stop you. You've got to be willing to go the distance. There's no distance I'm not willing to go to have the things that I've set out in my mind to have. I am going to push through every heartache, every disappointment, every setback. I'm going to push through the ridicule and the people talking behind my back. Matter of fact, I give that very little attention. I'm going to continuously go forward and do whatever I can. Wow. And I'm going to tell you, if you want to expedite your growth, expedite your success, expedite the achievement of those things that you're setting out to do, start pouring into somebody else who's doing a little worse than you are. And there's always that person. Start pouring into them, start sharing with them, start uplifting them, start giving them something to work with, start giving them the hope that you've experienced as you've made your transformation and your transition. And when you start to pour into somebody else, when life stops being solely about you, when life starts being about something bigger than you, life performs like it's bigger than you. I heard Tony Robbins say this a couple of years ago, maybe longer than that. I'm getting old. I heard, I dismissed that. But anyway, I heard him say that life will pay whatever price you demand of it. He wasn't lying. Everything I've ever set out to do, I've either done or I'm still in the process of doing. And some of the stuff I said, and the one thing anybody knows about me, I don't set out to do little stuff. Little stuff gets done in the process of doing what I'm trying to do. But I don't set out to do little stuff. I set out to do things that are intimidating, that stretch me, that make me certain that I'm not disappointing the Creator. That's what Stephen Furtick says, that if the vision you have for your life isn't so huge, it's intimidating you, it's probably insulting God. I don't want to be insulting my Creator. I want to be sitting up going, I want God to sit up and go, this dude here. And the thing is, the worst thing that can happen to me is I don't get it done in the time frame that I set out to do it. I'm okay with that. But what I'm not okay with is settling. I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with saying, well, I know I can do this, so I'm going to go over here and do it. I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with just being able to do something I know I can do and feel comfortable. Like I told you before, God, in the infinite power of his ability to communicate to his creation, revealed to me some time ago that you cannot build character in comfort. And for that reason, comfort is not something I seek. I create my comfort in my adversity. Matter of fact, I'm more comfortable when I'm facing challenges than when there are no challenges, because I've trained myself that that's where I'm supposed to be. When everything's going smooth, ain't nothing going wrong, I get anxious. I know, number one, I'm not where I need to be, because if I'm pushing and I'm where I'm supposed to be, I'm going to be on the battlefield. That's why I say I'm going to die on E, because if I'm doing what I'm doing, I'm spending myself. If I'm laid back and I'm kicking it, I'm wasting myself, and I get uncomfortable. So that's it. I absolutely adore every last one of you, and I don't care who you is, and I don't care how you feel about me. That's the wonderful thing about truly discovering who you are. You begin to feel about people a certain way regardless of how they feel about you. That doesn't mean that you allow them to mistreat you. It doesn't mean that you allow them to mishandle you. It doesn't mean that you open yourself up to be abused and mistreated. It simply means that you can give of yourself and be who you're designed be, regardless of whether the people are thinking about you. And you can even bless some people who don't want you to prosper. Now, I'm not talking about going out working with your known enemies. I'm talking about some people out there just upset with you because you're you. They can't understand you. They can't figure out. You don't fit into the puzzle of how they see life, and they can't stand you for that. But one of the greatest way to mend that type of situation is to bless them anyway, to be a blessing to them anyway. You should be able to determine and discern when somebody has good intent but has poor decision making. Help them with that. Don't sit back and say, shit, they don't like me, to heck with them. No. Help them with that. Now, there's some people out there that literally want your demise and will go to great lengths to bring it about. That's the enemy. Watch that person. And a lot of times they come in sheep's clothing. They are closer to you than you think. But anyway, I adore you. I'm going to down E. I promise you, I'm going to down E. I encourage you to do the same thing. Leave this life with a legacy that outlives you. It says you came, you saw, you conquered. You made your presence felt. You touched somebody's life. Do that. Well, that's it. I'm going to check out here. Thank you guys for stopping by. Again, the link to the book, which you'll find what I just shared with you, literally hammered out in great detail with probably a lot more in line direction of thought. You know me, man, I get to thinking about things and I want to touch it all. But this book is unbelievable. You know, I spent a lot of time in the last few years really working on what's going on in the Black community. And while doing so, I've been nurturing my businesses and doing things. And this is a part of who I am holistically, as a person who wants to see the world in a better place. And the only way that you make the world better is to make those who influence and impact the world better. And so that's what I've been trying to do. And so this book is a game changer for anybody who would take it. One of the principles in one of the chapters literally has the capacity to change your life. The more of these principles you can embrace, engage, and adopt, the more powerful and transformative this book will be for you. But I'm telling you, you can't go through it and it not have an impact. You cannot experience it and it not have an impact. I'm absolutely excited about getting it out, you know, but at the same time, I want to make sure it's exactly what I want it to be. Again, critical mass. For those who don't understand what critical mass is, in nuclear science, critical mass is the accumulation of the right amount of fissions to sustain a desired nuclear reaction. In life, critical mass is the accumulation of all of the components of success, fulfillment, of advancement and progression in life. When you get all of these components together, you have what's known as critical mass. And critical mass for each person is different. It depends on what you want out of life, where you're going in life. Your critical mass will be different. If you want to be a billionaire, your critical mass is going to be different than somebody that wants to retire to an island and live on nature. But your critical mass in success and relationships, it's got to be determined by what you expect. So that's why setting intent and having a goal is so important. Vision boards are huge. I can't explain. The clearer the vision, the more powerful the thoughts that are emitted from the vision. That's all I'm going to talk to you about today. I'll give you some more on tomorrow, but definitely understand that the Creator expects some things from you outside of you whining and complaining to him every day. You're bigger, stronger, and better than that. So let's make some things happen. That's it for now. I love you guys. I'm out. Peace.